Good morning, everyone. We are here today at Thurgood Marshall, and I have Lou Stubecki here with me from Trees for Neighborhoods. We're excited to do a site assessment and see what we may be able to plant here this fall. Lou, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, take it away.
All right, well, I'm going to talk about principles of right tree, right place today. And what that means is that you're siting trees in places where they'll thrive and be productive members of the tree community, so that there's some longevity and sustainability. So I just want to talk about a few things briefly before we walk around and look at planting sites. I could go over the benefits of an urban forest, and I know we all know and feel in our hearts that obviously trees are great, but just a reminder of some of the things that they do for us, such as cleaner air and water. And then one thing that I think is really important, that there's more studies coming up lately about how trees are important for beautiful, friendly neighborhoods, safer, quieter streets, and healthy, happy people. And what that means is that trees, what they do is they stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system so that we have less stress and we're nicer people. And wouldn't that be a wonderful thing, right? And schools, right? Wouldn't that be great for kids to see trees and also feel less stress? And so, of course, I think schools are a great place for trees, just for that reason, just like our neighborhoods are. So those are important things to think about as far as benefits of trees. And I should also tell you about Trees for Seattle as well. So Trees for Seattle is a program that's in Seattle Public Utilities. It's a city program, and it's an umbrella organization that reaches out to all the other departments in the city that manage trees. So we work with Parks Department, we work with Seattle Department of Transportation, we work with City Light, and our goal is to, of course, increase canopy in the city and make sure that it's healthy and thriving. And so Trees for Neighborhoods is a part of Trees for Seattle. And this was one of the programs that operates within Trees for Seattle. So, and I'll get to more to Trees for Neighborhoods later. But one thing you should know is that fall is the best time to plant trees in Seattle. A lot of people go, oh, why not now, or even in spring? But the reason why fall is the best for Seattle is that we get a lot of rainfall at that time. The other thing that's really, really important, and this is a little into science, but so when the trees leaf out in the spring, they send a hormone down to the roots to say it's time to start growing. So if you're planting your tree and it's already leafed out, what you have is you have these new little white hairs or roots that have come out. But when you plant a tree, and you'll learn when you learn about planting trees, you abuse it. And I know you saw the presentation. You're tearing those roots apart and all that. Well, all those new little roots that are just produced for the year are gone now because you beat the tar out of it, so to speak. So then your tree is kind of at a disadvantage when you plant it in the spring. If you plant in the fall, you do all that root abuse, right? Then the new leaves open in spring, and your system's already in place, and all those new little root hairs come out, and they're ready to go, and your tree has an advantage. So that's why we say do not plant in the spring, and fall is best. So a couple of things to think about when you're thinking about trees and siting trees and what you want to know, or what you want to do. You think right now you're planning. You plan now and you plant in the fall. And the things you want to ask yourself is, why am I planting a tree? And then you want to ask yourself, what site factors will influence my tree selection? Am I next to concrete? Is there a high voltage power line overhead? So what is the right tree for my site? Am I going to get a street tree or a yard tree? Because you do have streets that are adjacent to the school and planting strips, and so that may be a consideration. And then how am I going to care for the tree, right? Because it's great to plant trees, but if you can't care for them, they die, and so you've wasted your effort and your time and your money. So definitely knowing about how you can care for your tree is a critical situation. We've had folks who got trees. I remember one person said, oh, I planted this street tree, but I can't get to watering it. I live up higher on my property, and to get a hose all the way down there is really difficult. And so these are things you need to consider, especially getting water to the tree. And then we always ask ourselves, why plant a tree? Why am I planting this tree? Are you doing it for shade, reduce cooling costs, adding beauty, right? Creating privacy, building a sense of place, wildlife habitat. A lot of folks are interested in that. Stabilizing slopes is really important as well. And of course, one of the things that trees do so well is control stormwater runoff, which is why I think planting strips are a great place for trees. You know, I know a lot of people want to garden in their planting strips or grow vegetables, and okay, this is an opinion here, but honestly, I think it's not a great place for vegetables. When you consider all the cars that go by and they're braking and asbestos is landing on your vegetables, I don't think it's a great place. Trees, I think, are great there because one, they help shield noise control stormwater runoff so that the planting strip doesn't fill up and spill into the street and then run down into the drains. So it's really a great place for trees. And so then we look at what site factors will influence my tree choice. And I think at this point, I'll go over that briefly, but then maybe this is a good time to start walking around and looking at planting sites that you folks are interested in for the school. And we can look at all the different factors, like what do we have going on here, you know? But I'll briefly run over them. So site factors that will influence your tree choice will be available space above and below, right? So if you have a tree that gets 60 feet tall, but you have high voltage wires overhead, where you don't want the tree to get into that, you're not going to be putting a 60-foot tall mature tree underneath high voltage wires. And the key is understanding the mature size of all your trees. And one of the things I will give you a warning, if you're buying trees at a nursery, you'll see tags and they'll have the size on there. Well, be warned that size sometimes is just the size of the tree after 10 years. And I've asked nurseries, why do they do this? And it's because they think, well, you're only going to live in your home for 10 years on average, and people move. Well, but what about the tree doesn't move? It's still there, you know. So I remember my landlord, when I had an apartment I was living in, bought a tree that gets 40 feet tall. It was a larger dogwood, and put it right underneath high voltage wires. And I said, that's not appropriate. She goes, no, the tag said it only gets 12 feet tall. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right. Yes, so you know, you want to be aware of these kind of things. Is your space above and below, surrounding structures. You know, you don't want to plant trees 5 feet from your house or from any building, really. So you want to think about soil drainage too. We were just looking at a site in the back which seemed very compacted. If you have very compacted soil, you're going to have problems with soil drainage, and so you might want to do a very large preparation for your trees down the road, for a large area, not just the hole where they're going in. And of course, light exposure is important. A lot of the trees we have this year are sun-loving trees, but we do have a few trees that do not like to be in full sun all the time. For example, one of the trees we have is the Eddie's White Wonder Dogwood, and people tend to put dogwoods in full sun, and we try to warn them all the time, but you know, they just think that the dogwood works in full sun. And sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't. It's an edge tree, grows in the shade or at the edge of a forest in their native habitat. And so they like, ideally I say morning sun and afternoon shade. And especially in our environment, you know, on hot days, the afternoon sun is just brutal. And so some trees just are not really keen on that. So you'll find that there are some trees we talk about that do like morning sun, afternoon shade. So one thing I'll add as a caveat, I am a member of the Great Plant Picks Committee here in the Northwest. I'm on the tree subcommittee, and we just recently revamped our website. And what the Great Plant Picks is that we look at I'll just talk about the tree part of it, but we look at trees that perform in the Northwest and how they perform. And this ranges everywhere from British Columbia down through Oregon. We consider that the Northwest. And so as a committee, we have members from all three places, Washington, Oregon, British Columbia. We have to agree on a tree. So if I say, you know, like, oh, I love this elm tree, it's wonderful. You know, in British Columbia, they'll say, nope, can't do it. It's too cold or whatever, or, you know, so all right, so it doesn't go on the Great Plant Picks, you know, but we base it on performance. And so if you go to our website, you'll find a lot of great trees there. And I tend to try to pick trees for the program, the Trees for Neighborhoods program, that are on the Great Plant Picks list because, well, hey, they're great plants, right? It makes sense. So one of the things, though, on our website is that we recently revamped it and we put in like a non-mature tree size and then mature tree size. And I noticed a few of them, they haven't finished filling them out yet, so I'm a little concerned. and I have to talk to them soon about that. Is like, when are we going to get the true sizes up there again? Because I don't want people going there and being misinformed. But definitely just do your research. Typically our site is a good site to find out about trees, and if you're not sure, or if the mature plant size is blank, then the Great Plant Picks, and go elsewhere. But if you're looking at our trees from the program, we've done all that for you. We've done all the research. Next week or the following week, we will have on our website, I think you folks all have the handout, the flyer. We'll have all those trees on the website with web pages. Each one has its own web page. And then at the bottom will be links. So you can say, oh, I want to learn more about the Dura Heat River Birch. And you can click on the links that are below to go to different websites to learn even more details about them. So I definitely will recommend that you just learn as much as you can about these trees before you choose them. Diversity is really, really important for healthy trees in an urban environment. And for example, one of the things, I'm going to say it now, is we don't see maples on our tree selection. We did do vine maple in the past, but we don't use maples. And the reason why, and it's not because I don't like maples. I love maples, but they're overused. They're loved to death. 30% of our street tree population are maples. That is approaching a monoculture. Urban forest recommendations are no more than 20% in any one genus, right? And the maple genus is called Acer, A-C-E-R. And so having 30% of your trees in one genus is brutal. It's bad. So what happens if a devastating insect comes along, the maple, three-striped borer, and I'm making that up, but that's what these names that they come up with for some of these insects or diseases, and it comes and it's like its favorite food is maple, and that's all it kills. Well, there goes a third of your street tree population. You know how hard that is on cities? An example is the emerald ash borer, and this is a real life example. Emerald ash borer is an insect that kills every ash, except for maybe one species, but it kills all ashes. So there are so many cities back east and in the Midwest that are dealing with this right now, where it comes in and it's killed all their ash trees. Now, if maybe a quarter of their trees are ashes, that's a quarter of the trees that go bye-bye in the city, and it has a lasting effect on people. Depression. People are like, oh my God, I hate my street now looks like there are no trees, and it was this beautiful, the canopies met in the middle. So we stopped planting ash trees in the city for that one reason, because we fully expect that the emerald ash borer is going to show up here one day. Yes, we are trying to find trees that are more climate friendly here, obviously. There'll come a time when some of the trees we can't select. We still do try to use western red cedar, but a lot of folks are saying that there's going to come a time when western red cedar won't be able to live in our urban environment. So your European white birch and your Himalayan white birch are the most susceptible to this bronze birch borer, and it is killing birches left and right. It's sort of, I always like that movie The Sixth Sense. I see dead people. Well, I see dead birches everywhere, and it's ridiculous. They're dying left and right. And my neighborhood's full of birches where the tops, they die from the top down.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, and it's the bronze birch borer. Now, not to say that that's the exclusive reason. What happens is that birches get stressed, and then the borer takes advantage of their inability to expunge it. Like when the borer tries to bore into a healthy tree, it's going to get pushed out. But unhealthy birch is going to succumb to the borer damage. So yeah, if your trees were unhealthy here, I wouldn't be surprised if the borer came in afterwards and just destroyed them. But this site here is, I was talking with Colleen a little bit about it. This would be a great spot for trees for the kids, except for one thing, and I'm sure you're going to run into it there. It's heavily compacted. Yeah. When you look at this, and it's already so dry. I mean, oh my God, it is brutal. Well, I would recommend, if you're going to plant trees in this spot, is with the kids running around, is to first, maybe this summer, is go through and sort of break up the compaction, maybe do some light tilling at the surface, mix in a little compost, but not a lot, because people love compost and they put it in planting holes, but it disappears over time, and then what happens is your holes shrink and your trees drop below grade, and you don't want that. But a little at the surface is good, and then caring for trees, you want to continue to add compost. And even in grassy areas, you can add like a layer, 1-inch layer, water it in, and then, you know, this is a good treatment for your soils to keep them rich. Trees we give away are about 6 to 7 feet tall.
That's much larger.
And they come in like 6 or 7 gallon containers. So they're going to be, you're going to see them, you know, but you are going to want to put a cage around that for the first probably 5 years of its life, because we have an establishment period. What we've noticed is that trees need watering for the first 5 summers to help them get established. You know, SDOT was doing 3 years, and then they'd pull the water bags off, and what they found is that the trees were dying in the 4th year. So we, in Trees for Seattle, we send you watering reminders for the next 5 years. Okay. You put a nail in a tree at 5 foot level, and the tree grows at a rate of 1 foot a year. Where will that nail be in 5 years? Same exact spot. Because trees grow, they're like Russian nesting dolls. That's the best analogy I can use. Is like year 1 is the littlest doll in the center, right? Year 2 is the next doll just outside of that. So they grow from what they call meristematic points. They're dividing areas where cells divide, and so they add in length and girth. And so if anything, a low branch, if I'm a tree and this is my low branch, this branch will always be here until it's pruned off. And if anything, it'll get closer to the ground, because as it gets longer with the weight, it'll start to drop down. So you do have to have a program of limbing your trees up over time. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. I really hope that you'll be able to find some trees you like. And keep in mind that I am open for consultation via phone. And now that I've seen your site, I know a little more. So if Nicole calls me and says, well, what about blah, blah, blah over there? Keep in mind too, when you're looking at the trees, you know, definitely the height, the width, the mature size is important. But then after that, you're choosing, and also the light exposure, what it likes in that regard. But then you're looking at things that turn you on, you know, like, oh, I love white flowers, or I hate white flowers, or, you know, I want, what's that?
Fall color.
Fall color is really like something that people love, you know, and maybe one of the trees doesn't have good fall color, and so you want to steer clear from that. But if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me to ask about the trees.